Well, good morning, everyone. As you all settle in, we're glad to be able to gather together for worship, coming into this space. Just the privilege to be one community. If you're visiting with us, welcome into Waypoint. That our desire, our longing at Waypoint is to be a genuine community that is able to pray with one another and for one another. If you haven't filled out a connection card before, we would love to just reach out to you, just share with you what's going on in the life of the church as we head into the summer and then into the fall, and as activities start to pick back up. This is our main way of communicating out, that an email on Wednesdays heads out for folks. But at Waypoint, our mission, our goal is to be an equipping church. We want to equip you so that you can share the gospel kind of in your places of influence. And so we've got journals and we've got a little kind of discipleship manual out in the kind of foyer for you as well. The other thing is we have Base Camp is our kids' children's ministry for our from birth all the way up through elementary age. And so we would love, if any of y'all have a heart for just teaching and being with the children, it is a great opportunity for us to just support the young families in the church. One of the things Katie noticed that's interesting is as we're coming out of COVID, that a lot of the newborns who were born during COVID are actually struggling with separation anxiety of leaving their parents in this time. And so if you think about it, that transition, they've been so used to being at home and being with their parents that the idea of going into the nursery can be a little unsettling for them. And so one of our goals is having church members in that space to just frequently show the love of the church, and so that the children can become more and more confident into this space. But so as we gather in this time together in worship, let us just turn our hearts to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, I ask that you would come into this space, that you would come in and speak each word that each one of us needs to hear. Lord, I pray through the prayers and the music and the message and the praise and prayer that, Lord, your word would be proclaimed, and that wherever we are spiritually, we could just come and see your goodness for us. We pray all of this in your Son's name. Amen.
We invite you to stand up, get moving, get a little warmer. We come into this space and come to worship the Lord. Let's just come. We're going to sing a few songs together, and I'll just invite you. I don't know where your heart's been this week, but I will tell you that mine has been distracted amidst packing up boxes in one house and moving to another, and picking up one house to sell and getting settled in the other. It's just been a distracting week. And so I will just invite you to come to this space. Let's just listen to what the Lord has to say to each and every one of us. And I want us to come and have our hearts refreshed by this.
Been held in your hand.
thank you, you're a God that we can trust in. That you're making a way and working even when we don't see it. And so, Lord, we do just come again this morning. We just trust you. We just put our arms out and ask you to speak to us this morning, that we might feel your presence in a new way, that we might trust you before we see the turns in the road. We pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. We're going to say a little prayer of confession. Make some changes, realizing that the screen broke, so we had to put it on the wall. The wall's behind me, so I can't see it, so I had to put it in front of me here. But what I want to do is just say this prayer of confession, and give you 30 seconds just to go before the Lord yourself. And then Mike's going to start in on the drums for our next song. Just in this moment, just want to invite you to go before the Lord yourself, your own heart, your own mind, and see what the Lord needs to say to you as we come to this place this morning. So let's say this together, and then we'll give you 30 seconds of silence. Lord, you never stop pursuing us. Thank you for making a way back to you through Jesus. God, we confess that we are not as strong as we think we are. We fall short of your perfection because we too often try to do life in our own strength rather than yours. Help us, God, to depend on your matchless and unending love for us. In Jesus' name, amen. awakening as you pursue us in a never-ending love. We ask this morning as we come and just sit in this place and listen to your word, that you would give us ears to hear, hearts to receive, and minds to process what you are saying to us this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. Please see you.
Well, welcome into Waypoint. Glad you're here. I was thinking as we were singing and worshiping, I remember back when Waypoint was getting launched up, I put my foot in my mouth with my church planting coach, where I said, Waypoint, I never want to be a church that has a countdown clock before worship. And then I quickly stopped and looked at him and realized, I said, your church does a countdown clock before worship, don't they? He said, yeah, but because at least you know who you want to be. Because the reason I didn't want to have the countdown clock was because I realized for Waypoint, worship begins when you first walk onto the campus. Worship begins, I loved when we met at the Myersburg High School. One day I counted there were 19 men and 3 ladies drinking coffee 20 minutes before church. That is the beginning of worship as we gather into this space. And today, as we were worshiping and moving in from that kind of gathering space into then praising God, I realized we were hitting the flow of worship. At Waypoint, we like to say the flow of worship is first the gathering of greeting people where they are, and then drawing us in and drawing our attention to God. So I don't know if you'll notice, but the good news behind the breaking of the screen was that it meant that the cross that we always popped up is now able to be seen. So I never tend to ask surveys, especially right in the middle of a sermon. But can you all see this wall really well? Okay, cool. Then we might make some adjustments going forward on this. As the way that the songs just drew my attention off of myself and onto the cross. That worship gathers us from the streets, brings us in to draw our attention off of ourselves as we confess, and then puts our attention on the cross. And then we're ready to hear the Word of God and hear God's goodness for us. And then the final act of worship we'll do is our response. It's our praise and prayer time. But today we're going to go into the book of Joshua. If you've got your Bibles with you, I'd invite you to open it up. And we're going to look at Joshua 1. That we've been doing this series called Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories. That what we've been looking at, and what we'll look at this entire summer, are these stories of just ordinary people. I think a lot of times as we come into the scriptures, we see these stories as kind of mythical superheroes that lived at some time so irrelevant years and years ago, centuries past. And we forget that these people, Abraham and Joshua today, Rahab, these people we're going to look at were real men and women who lived in real time in history, who were just ordinary people that God encountered in extraordinary ways and was able to take them and transform them. And if God could use them, then certainly he might be able to use us as well. And so we're going to look again at Joshua, this Old Testament book. It's the 6th book of the Old Testament. If you're looking for it, it comes just after Deuteronomy. The first 5 books kind of cover the life of Moses, from creation all the way up to the death of Moses. And then this book picks up with the follower behind Moses, Joshua. Before I began studying this, I always assumed Joshua 1 because Joshua was this young man taking over for Moses. I always pictured him as a young 20, 30-year-old man. But as I was studying it this week, I realized Joshua is a 59-year-old man when this story comes about. And as we'll see, he was wrestling with insecurity and doubt and fear and worry and wondering how he was going to lead the people of Israel. And it always made sense to me if he was a young man in that. But now I'm realizing, no, he's a mature adult male, still wrestling with it. What it made me realize was our insecurities, our doubts, our fears, our worries won't just go away with time. It's going to take the power of God, the confidence that God can give us to change us. So as we prepare to hear God's word for us, let me just turn to God in prayer for us. Heavenly Father, I ask that you would come into this space, Lord, that you would speak to us as we need to hear your word, the word of love, the word of confidence, the word of hope that we need this day. Lord, would you just set me aside that you may be glorified? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing to you, O God. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. I was talking with a group of pastors this week, and one of the pastors said it really well. He said, you know, what he's noticed in his own life, and he thinks it's true for many of us, is that as a young man, we want to do great things for God. But he's realized over time that as we age, what he wants to be is faithful to a great God. I love that transition, that many of us, when we're young, we want to do great things for God. We have great aspirations, great visions of achievement and success and prosperity and things we will be able to accomplish in our life. But suddenly as we age, we realize God's faithfulness through all of this. And that what we want to be is faithful back to him because of his greatness. And I think we see that in the story of Joshua. That Joshua, again, was this man who was taking over for Moses. Remember Moses? Moses was the man who was in slavery in Egypt that God called to lead all of the people out of this slavery in Egypt and to take them back to the promised land. To the land promised to Abraham generations before. That Moses was to lead this charge, to free them from the great power of Egypt, and to carry them forward. But as they were journeying, and we'll see in a little bit, they made a few mistakes in that, such that God said, Moses, you will no longer be able to take these people in, but I'm going to allow your follower, your servant, Joshua, to fulfill his promise, to fulfill the promises kept. So Joshua 1 opens up with this. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready now to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert of Lebanon and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Joshua is taking over for Moses, taking over and fulfilling the promise not only made to Moses, but all hearkening back to the promise made to Abraham. That God is going to fulfill his promises. Back in Genesis 12, last week we talked about Abraham. Back in Genesis 12, God makes a promise of three things to Abraham. He promises progeny, offspring, children. He promises property, land. And he also promises his presence. I like that. That's what got me through Old Testament 101 was memorizing it as the three P's of property, progeny, and presence. God's promise to us is a hope. It's a progeny. It's a future. God's promise for us is that goodness. God's promise is also property. It's stability. It's a place to lay your home, to feel comfortable in that. And ultimately, the third one, God's promise, is his presence. That he will be with you. These were the promises God made to Abraham. These were the promises God made to Moses as he was leading them out of Egypt. These are the promises for Joshua as he takes them into the promised land. And these are the promises for us as well. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. See, he's about to give them the promised land. He's about to settle them into that place they have been longing for. And if you look geographically at what God's doing here, it's an interesting place God has selected to be the promised land. When you look at all the other powers that happened during the Bible time, that the promised land is this desert. It's not a fertile soil. It's a dry and barren place. But God is intentionally placing the people of Israel right in the crossroads of all these great empires. that will come one day. God is placing the people of Israel as almost a crossroads between all of these great empires, of the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Persians, and the Egyptians. That the people of God, this small little tribe, is being placed there for a purpose, to be able to influence and impact the world. They're put right in this vulnerable space in the middle, but they're there for a purpose. That like the people of Israel, God has placed us where we are for a purpose. It's right in the heart of this community, of this city, right at this time period. Wherever you are in your office, in your homes, in your schools, God has placed you there as a crossroad so that you might be able to influence all these other powers around you. It's the great call that Joshua is about to lead the people across the Jordan River and into this place. And so you can imagine Joshua's nervous, the anxiety, the worry, the self-doubt, the fear. He's taking over for the great Moses, fulfilling the great promises of God. And so over and over again in this passage, God reminds Joshua to be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give you. Be strong and very courageous. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua is going to be this great military leader. He's going to lead the most successful campaign for the people of Israel in gaining the promised land for them. But you see over and over again in the opening chapter of this, God has to remind him to have strength and to have courage. Beneath the bluster of the great military leader of Joshua is this insecurity, is this fear, is this worry, is this doubt. He's wondering if he could accomplish the greatness. And each one of us, I imagine, there are times where we too have that insecurity and that doubt and that wonder. Are we going to be able to do what God has called us to? Are we going to be able to achieve what we desire? I mean, you think about it, very kind of relevant and practically, for both Hubert Davis and John Shire, taking over for Roy Williams and taking over for Coach K. You got to imagine the worry, the anxiety, the doubt. That's just like Joshua trying to take over for Moses to step in and to fill those shoes. Have you ever been called upon where you've wondered, do I have what it takes? Have you ever doubted yourself and wondered if you could do it? I remember the very first funeral I ever officiated. I was nervous and anxious, and I was going to the home of the grieving family, and I was fresh out of seminary, and as I arrived in the driveway and stepped out of the car, the grieving brother greeted me, and he looked at me and said, "Man, are you even old enough to drive over here?" So I appreciate that. Thanks. That really, really inspires the confidence to bring greed to help you through the loss of your loved ones. Have you ever had to step into a place where you just don't feel adequate, don't feel capable, don't feel like you have it? Where does your strength come from? Where does your courage come from? Are you trying to rely on your own strength? Your own build-up, your own kind of courage? Don't be fleeting. Or will you allow God to do it in and through? Joshua was never a courageous man. He never had strength of his own. It took power and it took work by the Lord. I mean, as I love looking back on the story of Joshua. See, what happened was Moses was leading the people of Israel, was leading them to the promised land, and when they got near there, Moses sends out 12 spies to go over in the land. And they go and check it out. And they come back and report how great this land is. That it's flowing with milk and honey. They bring fruit back from the land. They start talking about how great it is. But then they also say that the people there in the city are very numerous. And the spies describe the city as being very fortified and very hard to take. In Numbers 13, it says they came back to Moses and Aaron and all of the Israelites, and they reported that we went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who lived there were powerful, and the cities were fortified and very large. So the spies come back. Of the 12 spies, they come back, and this is the report they give. But then there's this one man who speaks up differently. Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are." Right here in this picture, Joshua was one of the 12. Joshua is not speaking up at this point. Caleb shows confidence. Caleb shows the belief that we can take this land. He doesn't dismiss the greatness of how fortified that city was or how powerful they were. He just had this supernatural power, this ability to trust in God. Joshua remained silent in this first encounter. So then the people of Israel, they hear the report and they're just terrified and they begin to grumble and they say, "We want to go back to Egypt. We want to take us home, take us back to slavery, because it would be far better than that than leading us into this promised land." And so then Numbers 14 tells us, in response to their grumbling, Moses and Aaron fell down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. And then Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey. He will give it to us." So now Joshua jumps on board with Caleb. Now he's saying, "Yeah, we can do this. We can do this." Where did that confidence, where did that strength, where did that courage come from? I think it's in that little verse beforehand, where Joshua was there and saw Moses and Aaron fall face down in front of the whole Israelite community. He saw his mentor, his leader, move into a position of humility, a position of prayer, a position of surrender. He saw that the strength of Moses doesn't come from arguing, from power, from might. It comes from a position of humility, a position of surrender. And that gave Joshua the confidence that they could move forward in that. See, for over and over again, for Joshua's whole life, he's told over and over again to be strong and courageous. God tells Joshua, as we saw in the passages of Joshua 1, 6, and 7. Even back in Deuteronomy 3:28, Moses, his mentor, tells him to have strength and to have courage. And then the close of this passage of Joshua, even the people of Israel, the people he's now leading, turn back to him and say, "Have courage and have strength." Verse 16 says, "Then they answered Joshua, 'Whatever you have commanded us to do, we will do. And wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Only be strong and courageous.'" You see, the people around Joshua were just reminding him over and over again, be strong, be courageous, have hope, have confidence in God and the promises of it. God is speaking up to him, his mentor, and then the people that are surrounding him. I believe these are the voices that need to be speaking to us in our own hearts and our own lives. That we need to hear God's word for us, speaking that confidence into you. Be strong, be courageous. Know that I am with you, the Lord says. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Whatever you are facing, God is there with you. Know that you have mentors. God has placed men, women in your life, like Moses, who can speak those words to you, who can show you humble confidence of it. And then know that you have a community around you that wants you to rise up with confidence and strength and courage. See, the people of Israel are able to do it because they trust Joshua. They answered Joshua, "Whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go." Their relationship was built on trust. There's a great book out there simply by the title called The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. I love his opening line in the book. He says that there's one thing that is common to every individual, relationship, team, family, organization, and civilization throughout the world. One thing which, if removed, will destroy the most powerful government, the most successful business, the most thriving economy, the most influential leadership, the greatest character, the deepest love. It says the one thing is trust. The people of Israel trusted Joshua. They're willing to follow him because they trusted him. He was able to have that courage and strength because he had the trust that God is who he said he was. That faith and that confidence gives him that trust. That is what our faith is. It's placing our trust in God and not in ourselves. It's seeking the strength of the Lord and not our own strength. It's taking courage in him. Courage, the Latin root cord, literally means heart. I love this passage of Psalm 24:14. It tells us to wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart. Be strong and courageous and wait for the Lord. Notice where David is drawing that strength and that courage. Again, not from our own capabilities, not from our own strength, our own power, but by waiting on the Lord. Waiting on the Lord. For 40 years, Joshua was wandering in the wilderness, trusting daily on the Lord, eating manna provided from God every single day. He was waiting on the Lord, waiting until the day they arrived at the Jordan. And then he had to lead the people across the river. He had to rise up and take charge. And he found that spiritual strength. For as Joshua 1:8 closes, it says, "Do not let the book of the law depart from your mouth, but meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful." He knew the strength. The strength would come not through his own capabilities, but by a spiritual strength, by meditating on God's word, on God's promises for us, day in and day out, turning to that, and being careful to do everything written in it, of knowing God's goodness, of seeing God's love for us, seeing the promise ultimately fulfilled by Jesus Christ for us. That we wait for the Lord, and that we might take heart, because he will give us the strength we need. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 12:10, he says, "I delight in my weaknesses. I delight in my hardships and my insults, in difficulties and persecution. Because when I am weak, then I am strong." When we are weak, when we can no longer depend on ourselves, then we are strong because we turn our dependence on the Lord. Thanks be to God. So if you're visiting with us at Waypoint, the final act of worship is we like to respond to the goodness of God. Respond with our praise and our prayers. Our praise are the moments where we've seen God at work. Where have you seen God give you that confidence, that strength you need? And then our prayers are the places where we need God to work, where we need God to show up. And just as a genuine community, we open up and just share what God is up to. And so today we get the privilege of getting to hear from Will Moore. He's going to come and share with us what God has been stirring in his life.